What's going on, everybody? In this video we're going to talk about a totally wrong article, the one right behind me. Bitcoin's still 10% down amid a record delay to new all-time highs. Is that right? We're going to talk about spot Bitcoin ETFs and what's been going on with Grayscale, something interesting, a trend. And we'll see what else we get into, but first off, let's start with this article. Bitcoin is simply too slow to preserve historical norms this time around. Peter Brandt. You guys might know that name. But to be fair, he measures cycles differently apparently. His cycle starts at the previous bear market low, November of 2022. Then the high of the cycle, starting at previous low prior to halving. Not only has this high not been violated, but high from previous bull cycle on inflation adjusted basis is still intact. Maybe because he measures cycles different than basically everybody. This makes zero sense to me, but let's continue on. 3 things to note: ongoing series of lower highs and lower lows. Okay, that's true. Downward slope of lows shows lack of energy. Well, that's what lower lows are, is a downward slope of lows. So that's basically point 1 and 2 together. No other post-halving time in Bitcoin history when a new all-time high has taken this long. If you ignore what he said about inflation adjustment, because that's not really how this works, Bitcoin has in fact hit a new all-time high much earlier than any other cycle. And we can argue why this is. Why I think this is clearly because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, all that money there that flowed into Bitcoin, the excitement of it, the anticipation of it. That I think is why we saw all-time highs earlier than any other cycle. And I'll show you guys the chart in a second. Go over how September has actually performed during a halving year. You might be surprised. If you've watched my previous videos, you won't be surprised at all. Now let's talk about the previous halving years, or the previous halvings in general. Here's 2012. When did we see a new all-time high from Bitcoin? August of 2012. So that would be like us seeing a new all-time high for Bitcoin in this cycle just last month, when we saw our new all-time high months and months ago. We're ahead of schedule. After Bitcoin created that all-time high, what did it go on to do? Well, it consolidated. It started pulling back. We started seeing lower highs, lower lows for a brief period before we retested those previous highs and blasted off at the end of the year. That Q4 rally, that end of halving year rally that we have seen every single cycle so far. And we're not even going to talk about the post-halving year. That's when things get really nutty. 2013, insane rally. You didn't want to miss it. What about the 2016 halving? Well, it took quite a bit longer to get to new all-time highs. On that halving, it basically took the year after the halving year. So 2017 rather than 2016. It came in a lot later than the previous cycle. Look what we saw out of September. Oh, let me go back to this September too, just to show you guys before I forget. And from the beginning of September of 2012 to the end of September 2012, we did actually end that month green. This was a good month. September was a good month when looking at the halving years. Otherwise, September is a terrible month. What about the 2016 halving? What happened to September on that halving year? Here is the 1st of September right here. And the end of September. Moral of the story, we did see a green September right around, what, a 5%, 6%. This isn't perfect, but you did see that from here to roughly the end of September, we did see a positive move. Another halving year where we saw a green September. 2 out of 3. And like I said, guys, in this cycle, it took until basically 2017, so the year after the halving year, to go to new all-time highs. This cycle, we were early to all-time highs, no doubt about it. And speaking of that downwards, lower highs, lower lows, that consolidation period that Peter Brandt was showing regarding this cycle and how things look so terrible, well, we have seen this in past cycles. This long consolidation phase before we finally break out. And to be fair, on the 2020 halving year, September was actually a bad month. According to this, it lost around 9.5%. I'm not sure how accurate these percentages are. The point is, 2 out of 3 halving cycles, September ended the month green. September was a good month when looking at the halving years. Otherwise, September is a terrible month and you have to wait for October. Oh yeah, and then 2020 halving year, where did Bitcoin finally break out to new all-time highs? Well, it took until roughly November. It took until that end of year, end of 2020. So that would be like us in 2024, still not seeing new all-time highs, not even getting to that 74,000 yet, not even getting to that 69,000 yet that we saw early in 2024. That would be as if that never happened yet, and we are still working towards that. We are ahead of schedule. We are so far ahead. This consolidation has people spooked. This consolidation has people thinking, this hasn't happened any other cycle. We're in big trouble. This is definitely bearish, isn't it? This is just going to be a terrible cycle. Things are not playing out like they have in the past. And that's true, they're actually playing out a lot better. If it wasn't for spot Bitcoin ETFs, we would still be waiting to break all-time high. Now, while we are obviously not past all-time high here, we have pulled back. We have seen this on halving years where Bitcoin kind of pulls back during 2020, for instance. It pretty much pulled back for a very, very good portion of 2020. Imagine how rough this would be. Imagine following this and saying, oh no, this halving cycle isn't going to play out, and starting to get out, starting to fear yourself out back in, March, April, May, maybe July, August, even September. You're like, I don't know, we're still not breaking that previous all-time high. And then what happened? You start getting into 2021 and that Q4 of the halving year, Q4, keyword. Q4 always sees a rally from Bitcoin. I expect nothing different this cycle based on what's going on around us. If you got feared out seeing these lower lows, lower highs, you would have missed the 2021 rally, the huge run. You would have been way down here selling at like $10,000. To me, this is nothing more than what we have seen in the past. Lower lows, lower highs as we approach the end of the halving year. This is nothing new. We have seen this before. Now, as for what Bitcoin's doing right now, I'll just show you guys very quickly. I would very closely watch this area. I do think this is going to be our second shoulder. Maybe we come down to like 55, but that's good. We're revisiting it. This is going to be clear to the market that we're going to see that second shoulder. As long as we don't drop more, as long as we don't drop to like 50,000, then I'd be worried. Then we're definitely going to retest this low, and that means we might see more pullback. But would that mean it's time to sell and give up on Bitcoin? If you understand Bitcoin, if you really see the big picture, why would you leave Bitcoin for US dollars? That is not the point here. I'm not in Bitcoin just for a couple months to get a couple bucks. I'm in Bitcoin for the long haul. I'm in Bitcoin to see where it is in a decade from now, 2 decades from now. I think it is worth being patient for. And in reality, based on past cycles, you probably won't have to be patient. Q4 has always seen a run, and like I said, I expect no different. I would be a little worried if we were running up to Q4, if we were consistently breaking new all-time highs coming up to Q4. That would be different than previous cycles. I'd say everything is playing out very similarly, besides the fact that we broke all-time high before any other cycle. Now, I also want to show you guys GBTC and the trend that has been happening. You'll see how when spot Bitcoin ETFs went live, we just saw this beginning huge amounts of outflows to the tune of $500 million, 600 million. These huge outflows, we haven't seen outflows like that since. We had a 300 million outflow back in like April, and then since then it's 100 millions and 50 million, 70 million, with some inflow days from GBTC. While in the beginning we saw nothing but outflow days. You'll see the trend is changing. You can clearly see that the outflows are getting smaller, and as of the last couple months, the inflows have been a little more consistent, I'd say. But I do think we will start seeing this change. We will start seeing this black line trending a little bit higher and starting to see more inflows, especially based on where we are in the cycle. I would be very surprised if we just consistently kept seeing outflows, started seeing outflows from IBIT, which, by the way, they've only posted like 2 or 3 outflows since inception, which is insane when you think about it. Now, we do have an update on the spot Bitcoin ETFs, spot Ethereum as well. We saw a net outflow of 37 million on September 4th, and GBTC gave a 34 million outflow. You'll see that those outflows are getting smaller, as I showed you guys on that graph. But gone are the days of seeing a $500 million outflow from GBTC. Gone are the days of probably seeing 300 million outflow. And I do suspect soon we will start seeing more inflows as the OGs in those funds are finally leaving. All that dust is finally settling, in my opinion. Now, here's something interesting regarding ETH. On August 30th, the total net outflow and inflow of ETH spot ETF were 0, which was the first time in 30 days since launch that the inflow and outflows were 0. Currently, the total asset value of Ethereum spot ETF is about $7 billion. And the net outflow, thanks to basically ETHE, is $477 million. Now, there's been people saying that these 4-year cycles are not playing out anymore. The whole reason we ran this cycle is because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And while that is definitely a major reason, and obviously a reason we saw all-time highs a lot earlier this time around, I do think the halving cycle will continue to play a huge effect on Bitcoin. Consider this, seeing 900 Bitcoin a day entering the market, and then the day of the halving, and after that day moving forwards for the next 4 years before it gets cut in half even more, you're going from 900 Bitcoin a day down to 450 Bitcoin a day. That is a huge difference in supply moving forwards. I do think the halvings will continue to play some kind of role on Bitcoin's price action. There will be these cycles, there will be these rallies around the halving. In the end, it is as simple as supply and demand. And also a huge thing is the vast majority of Bitcoin is already in circulation. We are going to be fighting for the last scraps of Bitcoin, mark my words. Whenever anyone compares Bitcoin to tulip mania, remind them that you can grow as many tulips as you want. You can grow 21 million, 55 million, 121 million. As much space as you have, you can grow infinity tulips. No matter how many Bitcoin mining rigs, no matter how much money you have, no matter how rich, how wealthy anyone on this planet is, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and the vast majority is already among us. Once you fully believe in Bitcoin, you realize that price is really only a distraction. In the end, one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin, regardless of if it's a $50,000 Bitcoin, a $150,000 Bitcoin, a $10,000 Bitcoin, $1 million Bitcoin. But let me know how you see Bitcoin. Do you see Bitcoin as a short-term trade, or do you see the long-term picture? Do you see that from cycle to cycle, we will always see higher highs and higher lows, and we will never get to the bear market lows of previous cycles? Follow Bitcoin's trend ever since its inception, and it becomes so much easier. Thanks as always for watching, guys. In the end, you need to gain your own convictions for your Bitcoins, your crypto miners, your stocks, whatever it may be. You need to believe in it yourself. Once you believe in it yourself, it becomes a lot easier to hold, a lot easier to buy while there's fear, and not get shaken out and sell. But anyways, thanks as always, guys, for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.